G'day everyone, this is Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor, co-founder and CEO of Aureus Financial.
Sam Panetta, the co-founder and COO of Aureus Financial.
And welcome to another episode of Ask Aureus Anything. This is our 10th episode of our live Q&A, which is very exciting. We're starting to get some more momentum and things are looking great for this format. I think that this is something that we wanted to trial. It's worked very well. It seems that all of you are getting a lot of value out of it. So we're going to keep kicking on.
Yeah, and thank you all for everyone who sent us through questions during the week. We appreciate that. That helps us, talk about stuff that you guys want us to talk about. We're close to 1,000 members now in that Wealth Mentor community. So make sure that if you're part of the community and you get value out of it, that you want to add your friends, you want to add your family, you're more than welcome to. The more people that we can add value to, the better it is for everyone.
Yeah, and look, I think that it's also meant to be a format and a community where you as business owners, as professionals, have the ability to ask questions and share insights about your own experience, and even use this place to be able to talk about your business or your profession, what you do as an expert. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people from the group that will either be able to learn from your experience or be able to leverage and utilize your services. So please feel free to share.
All right. As always, every week, this stuff is general advice. It is not a specific tailored advice. So please do not go away and action anything until you have consulted a professional.
And we forgot to mention our prize winner this week, which, we had a busy start to the week and it escaped me. But we needed to announce our winner of our prize for the best contribution to the community is Peter Arcuri. Peter, you asked us for the lotto numbers, and we're going to give you something that's even better than winning the lotto. I'm going to give you a hard copy of my book, which is probably going to translate to lots of financial gain for you into the future. So I'm sure you're going to get a phenomenal amount of value out of it, and you're never going to have to play the lotto again.
Pete wins because he's the first person to ask us a question that we couldn't answer.
Exactly right.
We couldn't answer. We've answered questions about Basil and Buster, but we couldn't answer your lotto number questions, Pete. So you're the winner this week.
Congratulations, mate. We'll get that to you hopefully by next week when our first print run comes in for the book. So let's dive right in. Once again, we prioritize our live questions. If you've got questions, post them straight up in the comments and we will answer them and hopefully give you some context. Otherwise, we've had some great questions for the week, which we're going to dive straight into. So, question number one, when you buy your dream home, will you put money towards renovations, making it your own, or will you keep investing your money elsewhere? This is a really good question. And I answer this question in a number of ways. The type of person that I am is that I don't buy brand new cars, and I typically will never buy a brand new house or extensively renovate a property. And the reason for that is that whenever you're doing that, you run the risk of over-capitalizing on the investment. Now, I'm a simple man. I have simple means, and I know what I want in terms of my property. I obviously want it to look nice and be very homely and enjoyable, but I'm not the type of person that's going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in renovations, given the stress, the anxiety, all of the fires that you've got to put out. It's just not something that I get enjoyment out of. Sam, on the other hand, he loves to swing a hammer around his head, so I'm sure he would get lots of kicks out of doing that kind of stuff. Something that I would do, however, is build a granny flat if I had a property big enough to get dual income. So to answer that question, I would probably prioritise investing. And of course, you can have the ability of getting the best of both worlds if you've got a property that allows you to do that. But myself personally, I wouldn't go through the heartache of renovating and trying to manage that entire process. I couldn't think of anything worse.
Look, I think it's a real personal question. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. I'm probably a little bit different from Jackson. I'd like to have a big, nice, fancy home one day. So I probably would put some cash towards it, towards building a new house, or extensive renovations, if you will. I think you need to be in a position to do it, right? So I don't think that you should be getting yourself into financial stress or financial pressure to have a really nice home. A lot of people can't afford the home they live in. While it might be really nice, no amount of nice homes is worth, the heartache and the stress that comes from struggling with your finances. So in short, I guess if you're in a good financial position and you can afford to renovate or rebuild and have a really nice brand new home, then I'd probably do it. But I wouldn't destroy your financial well-being to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, here's the thing. We've seen a lot of our clients go through this process, and for most of them are doing extensive renovations. They can't live in the house whilst they're doing it. So not only are they potentially, if they're doing a knockdown rebuild, it can be like a 9-month, 12-month process. They've got to go and rent somewhere and then be able to cover the costs of that and be able to then get the renovation all done and then move back in. So think about the costs of going and renting a place, uprooting your entire family over that period of time to be able to do it. Now, what a lot of smart people do who have the capacity to do it is that they do the investment first. So they build the granny flat out the back. They go live in the granny flat out the back. They do the full renovation and they can move back in. But of course, it's a numbers game. It's about being able to ensure that you plan effectively and get the best possible outcome. And it's funny, your better half is hitting the like button. Like, yes, renovate all the houses.
Build all the houses.
Mate, you're probably going to need about 13 bedrooms after you've all had all of your kids. And g'day, Elise. Good stuff.
Oh, so good. Oh, that was a really good question. That came through from one of our clients during the week. All right, so I really like this question as well, come through from another client. So being a contractor in the corporate world, what are some of my options to grow my wealth? So I really like this because a lot of the time we're talking about business owners and we're talking about growing your wealth through business. I guess being a contractor, you sort of are in business for yourself, but you're billing an hourly rate, right? So this particular client, he really understands that when you're billing for an hourly rate, you can't grow an asset out of that. You can't build wealth out of that. However, you can generate really good cash flow from doing that, substantial cash flow in some circumstances. So with that being the case, you're a contractor, you're working for an hourly rate, you're making really good money. What you have to do to grow your wealth, you have to make sure you've got a surplus income, right? So it doesn't matter how big your salary is or how much you're earning, you need to make sure that you're spending less than you earn and that you're saving money each month. And then with those savings, with that surplus, they have to be invested into growth assets, right? So typically when we talk about growth assets, we're talking about real estate and we're talking about shares or managed funds. And those are the two asset classes that you can passively or actively invest in, and it will outperform inflation over the long term. In the short term, they'll go up and down. They're going to be volatile. But if you want to grow your wealth, there's been so many countless amounts of millionaires and billionaires who have made their money investing in these sorts of assets, and it's no different from anyone else. If you're a contractor, you're in the corporate world, get that high-paying salary and invest it into good assets. Do that over 40 and 50 years, you'll end up a multi-millionaire.
Here's something else to add to it. I agree with all those things. I think that the important point there is that most people, particularly high-paid contractors and consultants, feel like they're going to get rich off their earned income, which is not the case. As I've mentioned before, I've had many clients who've had very basic level incomes. We're talking household incomes of 50, 60 grand that have been extremely wealthy because they've been able to master cash flow control and be able to commit surplus on a regular and ongoing basis towards building wealth for the future. And conversely, I've seen clients that have had sometimes 7-figure household incomes that haven't been able to get anywhere because they don't have the surplus to be able to support their ability to build wealth. So that's very, very important. The other thing is, I always believe that if you're good at what you do, you should work for yourself. And of course, working as a contractor, in a way you are working for yourself, but you are self-employed, which means that unless you turn up to work and unless you have a contract in order to fulfill, then you are not getting paid. So you have the ability to turn this on its head. Think about it. Who was the person that came up with the idea to bring you on as a contractor and put you into this big corporate business? So there's somebody there who is the mastermind, who is running some sort of agency or some sort of consulting company that's leveraging expertise to trade their time for money and taking a clip on the ticket. So if you are really good at what you do, you have the ability to learn the language of business and understand how you can create a business offering that allows you to carve out your niche in the market, to be able to exercise your skill set, to take a clip on the ticket of the consultants that you could bring in, then that is a way that you can expedite your journey in pursuit of wealth for the future. Once again, if you look at the rich list, all of the people that are on there are business owners. Sam has rightly said that a lot of them have continued to leverage their wealth that they've built through business through more passive means, through real estate and through shares. But the core of their wealth and the opportunity they created for them to build wealth in other ways has come through their business interests. So keep that in mind. Have a journey mapped out. Not for everyone to go into business for themselves, but if this is an ambition of yours, you want to be able to grow your wealth exponentially in pursuit of what you want, then that's often the best way to do it.
And you can work this out. Like, this doesn't have to be voodoo. You can sit down with an Excel spreadsheet or put your strategy together, work out what you're trying to achieve over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and then work back from there and go, okay, if I'm still learning this amount being a contractor and I'm investing in these assets at these growth rates, will I achieve what my goals are? If the answer is yes, perfect, you can continue on. If the answer is no, you've got to think about other ways to create more wealth.
Here's an example. We've got a client that is a business manager. They work in businesses, they manage offices, and they're phenomenal at what they do. They've been doing it for a really long time. And they were fed up with the grind of being in someone else's business, being basically the be-all and end-all of their business continuing to run, and only getting paid a salary that was only a fraction of what the business owner was getting. And after going through a number of strategy sessions and working through this, we're able to work out a viable business model to translate all of that back office and business management expertise into a business value proposition that leverages the power of virtual assistants to then go out and roll that out into small to medium enterprises to help them leverage that skill set to maximize on their fullest potential. And this is something that has come to fruition very, very quickly. So if you're ambitious, you're really good at what you do, you don't believe that you're fulfilling your potential as a contractor, as a salary person in a business, then there's creative ways that you can go about creating a service business where you can leverage your expertise to uplift your earnings capacity.
It's a good problem to have. Good problem to have. All right.
So, what do you guys do in your spare time? Besides growing beards, I've got a number of hobbies. Unfortunately, I've had to give away a few of my hobbies in recent times in light of being a CEO of a startup business, but I still try and immerse myself in a couple of my hobbies that give me a lot of fulfillment. So I've been training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for about 7 years now, on and off. It's something that you do have to be very consistent with if you want to be good at. Of course, given that we work very hard, I try and get on the mats as often as I can, but not really reaching my potential there. But something that I'm passionate about continuing to do for the rest of my life. The other thing that I'm really interested in is vintage motorbikes. So I currently have 3 vintage Harleys, one of which is working as of today. Thank you, Kyle Smith from Smith Concepts. I've got it finished to the line for a vintage motorcycle competition that I'm entering this coming weekend called the Machine Show. So I've been working on that for nearly 12 months now, got it done. I'm sure I'll post up some photos for the Sunday Fun Day because I'll be immersed in the event and hopefully winning some prizes for this vintage Harley. I used to do a lot of other things such as Spanish guitar and Argentinian tango, but those are things that I've had to forego for the time being, but I do want to revisit those in the future.
Yeah, I guess, look, I'm a pretty simple man. I don't really do a lot. I spend a lot of time with my family, and my friends. My wife's pregnant. She's due in less than 3 months. So I suspect that over the next 3 months, after the next 3 months, I'm going to be very busy with my little daughter, which I cannot wait for. Look, I do like to play around with the cars. I've got a Tirana that I'm supposedly building. I haven't touched it in a very long time. I've looked at it a couple of times and sort of walked in the other direction. I do like fast cars. Maybe this year I'm getting close to my 30th, so I might buy myself a nice car. After all my years of hard work, I've been working for 15 years now, since I was 15 years old. Other than that, yeah, I'm just a simple man from Narrowena, I guess.
You need some hobbies, Sam. What's going on, mate?
Yeah,
No. His hobby is Narrowena. No, that's all right. You can live vicariously through me, mate.
I will.
Oh, I kick my vintage motorcycles when they break down on the side of the road. Good stuff.
All right. So, look, this came through from, I guess, an inquiry we had this week, and it was really interesting. So, she said, "Hi, Sam. I'm wondering what kind of financial services do you offer, or how do I go about this? I'm new to this." And look, it was really interesting that that I received this text, and I thought, someone here, they've obviously seen us on Facebook. The inquiry came from Facebook, and they've sort of said, these guys, they're talking about money, they're talking about investing, business, wealth, lifestyle, they're talking about all these things, but they don't actually talk about the services that they provide, the hard financial services that they do. And it's because we essentially do nearly all of the financial services. So what the services we're offering is not what's really important. It's more important about finding out where the client is today and what the client's trying to achieve, and then utilizing whatever services we need to get them from where they are today to where their goals are. And will be different in every single case. There's not one person who's going to be the same as the next person where they need the same services. The technical aspect of what we're doing. If you needed to put a list, what do accounting, tax, mortgage broking, wealth coaching, superannuation, insurance, commercial law, virtual CFO, cash flow management. What else can you think of?
Here's the simple way to approach it. What we do best is we help you define what you want in life, coach you how you're best to get it, help you take action, and hold you accountable to the journey. So everything else is just a satellite of you being able to achieve all of those outcomes in your life. And that's the reason why we set up the business the way that we did, because there are so few businesses that actually give you a cohesive one-stop shop that is focused on you as the client, as opposed to just trying to flog you things that you don't need. So we have a very client-centered approach. Ultimately, we help you define what you want first, and then we tailor a solution to you based on those outcomes that you're trying to achieve in life, which is a bit of a different approach to the way financial services is traditionally done, as more of a transactional basis. You go into the bank and you set up a bank account. You go down to the local mortgage broker and they'll get you a mortgage. You contact some financial institution that's probably your employer put you in touch with to get a super fund, all of these things. So we're trying to bundle that all together just to make it really, really simple and uncomplicate the language of money.
Yeah, and I think don't misunderstand or don't underestimate the technical skills that we have here. It took Jackson and I 6 months to put together this suite of services where we could be a holistic financial services business. But the services, that's not what's important. Do you know what I mean? And that's where the whole financial industry gets it wrong, is that they're just trying to flog products, flog services, and that's great for the guy who's selling it, but the clients don't get their ideal result because they've never discussed their ideal result. Do you know what I mean? So we're trying to flip that on its head, and that's why we don't talk a lot about the actual services, and we talk more about the goals and the outcomes that the client's going to achieve.
Yeah, that's what's most important at the end of the day. Awesome. All right. So next question. So those of you watching, if you've got questions, post them up. There's no such thing as a silly question. Make sure you get involved. We want to give you some value.
We can see you. We can see you sitting there looking at us. So you can
watching us.
You can jump on and you can write a comment. We're not going to buy it. We're not going to buy it. He might. I don't know.
No, I'm all right. Are there options to move away from trading time for money as a contractor in the corporate world? And another great question, and this comes back to the point that I raised before. So once again, if you are a contractor and you are self-employed, you are trading time for money. And ultimately, the best way for you to come to terms with that fact is to work out how many hours are you actually working per week, and therefore how much are you earning per year, and then essentially work out the amount of hours per week times by 52, and then divide that by the total amount of earnings that you've made in a year. Now, what the even scarier part of that is if you work out all of the hours in a day and then times that by all of the weeks in the year, then work out what you're worth for every single hour of your day. And that's sometimes a scary number. And that gives you the ability to measure any opportunity that you look at as an opportunity cost against that number. Now, once again, if you are trading time for money, you need to escape this. And it's about being able to leverage other people's time. So back on my previous point, do you have the ability to monetize your intellectual property, all of your experience, to either share your knowledge and expertise under some type of subscription model where you can create a course and be able to educate others through your experience? Is there a way that you can provide your consulting to a one-to-many environment and be able to charge multiple people to be able to leverage your skill set and expertise? Is there a way that you can build a team under you that you can utilize for their one-on-one services or for their contracting or consulting and take a clip on their ticket to be able to initiate and manage that process? Within the scope of services and not straying out from what you're already doing already, that's really the limits to the opportunities that you have available. Of course, there's other ways that you can productize your knowledge through writing a book, similar to what I've done, and other things like that. But it's typically in the services, there's only so many things that you can do. You need to start monetizing other people's time or create something that will function without you. So that's the simplest way.
Yeah, and I think this ties into the question we had earlier as well. Let's say, barring all that you can't do any of that, right? Let's say that you're in a super specific niche and you get a massive hourly rate, and I don't know what sort of professions there are out there that are like that, but there's plenty, all right? If that's the case and you really enjoy what you're doing and you don't want to write a book, you don't want to go one-to-many or anything like that, then you need to make sure that this large income that you are making is going into quality assets. That's the only other way you're going to continue to grow wealth. As I said before, shares and property, they're the two ones that are going to grow over time above inflation. So yeah, there's heaps of options there, but it's going to be what's personally suited to you and what you're trying to achieve.
Here's the thing: a lot of these contractors and consultants, or typically that are working in the management consultancy space, we're starting to see, and it's the harsh reality, that corporate is trying to get rid of the dead meat and bring in fresh blood. And we're finding that most of these consultants are finding it extremely difficult to continue to charge the same hourly or day rate or the same overall salary package that they were once getting once they reached the age of 50. And the reason for this, and we've spoken to a number of HR experts who off the record have given us some deep insights around the thinking that goes into this at a corporate level, and it's risk management 101. They don't want to allow people to get to their kind of early 60s to mid 60s and then say, sorry, we've got to let you go, because of course the risk of unfair dismissal. So 50 seems to be the sweet number where you're far enough away from retirement that they're going to let you go. So you can't pull that card of saying it's for your age. And it's the harsh reality. So unless you are in a position where you have something unique that you can bring to the market, or you have the ability to monetize this fresh blood and get them into these positions that you can take a clip on the ticket, it is unlikely that your ability to continue to operate sustainably under that same level of income or that same growth trajectory of your income is going to be maintained as you get into your later years. So as the saying was once said, make hay while the sun shines, and make sure you diversify your options, because you can't take these things for granted.
Yeah, plenty of fuel for thought.
Yeah.
All right, it looks like this one is definitely for me. SJ, how is the journey to fatherhood? So it must be a very close friend of mine or family member who's written that, because SJ is my childhood nickname. How is the journey to fatherhood? It's really good. It's excellent, mate. I've wanted to be a father for a very long time. I've been married to my wife for 3 years now. We don't have long to go. My little daughter's due in less than 3 months, so it's all very exciting, and I just cannot wait. Absolutely cannot wait.
What are you most excited about having your first bub?
Everything, mate. So I want to. If I had to pick one thing, I think it would be I want to see her grow. Do you know what I mean? Grow from a baby to a toddler to a little girl, to a child, to a teenager, and then to a young woman. And I don't know, that's phenomenal. Do you know what I mean? I think as a man, as a father, to see your daughter grow up, I couldn't think of anything better than that. So that's what I would probably want the most.
What scares you the most, mate?
Nothing really. I'm pretty confident. I'm not really scared of any of it. I'm not really afraid of any of it, mate. I was the oldest in my generation by like 10 years.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I mean? So
you've played that role.
I've already been that role. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Like my younger cousins, my goddaughters, they're I think they're around 11. Do you know what I mean? So I'm nearly 20 years older than they are. Feel there's people out there 20 years old that are parents already. Sure. You know what I mean? So I've already been the eldest, been the oldest, been the leader. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with it.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be very exciting.
Uncle Jackson will
yeah, exactly.
Throw it to him.
Starts crying, hand it back. See you later, Sam. Have fun. I'm going home.
Yeah, so good.
All right. So I run a company and currently save 40% of my gross earnings for tax, GST. Is this going to cover all of my tax and GST and superannuation obligations, or should I be saving more? This is a fantastic question that I got today. I actually recorded a quick video for it, but I figured I'd cover this off in the Ask Aureus Anything anyway. So shout out to Kat. So this is a really good question, and it's important to understand the difference between the relationship of your tax at a company level, assuming you have a proprietary limited company, and your tax as an individual. Now, you need to be mindful that a company has a flat tax rate. So GST is a flat rate, 10% of your goods and services, and your company tax, depending on your turnover, so if it's under 2 mil, it's 28.5. If you're over 2 mil, it's 30. But let's just play it safe. So it seems as though Kat's putting away 40%. So 10% for the GST, 30% for the company tax, which is fantastic. But what most people often overlook is that when you pay yourself an income, you are now subject to what's called the marginal tax rate, which is a tiered structure. And this can complicate things a little bit when it comes to planning for your tax liability. So what I advocate that you do, a site that we use really often is a site called paycalculator.com.au, and it's a tax calculator. And you have the ability to chuck in a salary. And what I say for all of my clients is to be aspirational. Work out the salary that you want to work towards. And say, okay, I want to pay myself 120 or 150 grand or whatever it may be. And what it'll actually do is it'll break it down weekly, fortnightly, monthly, annually for you in terms of how much the gross amount would be, how much tax you need to put away, what your equivalent amount of superannuation would be, and then what your net amount should be to your pocket. So the idea should be that superannuation aside, because that's another conversation, as a business owner, you need to make sure that your obligations are met, which is tax and GST. Now, if you are paying yourself a salary in your business, which I do advocate, you are required to pay yourself superannuation at 9.5%. So the 40% isn't going to cut it. It's actually going to work out to in the vicinity of let's say about 45%, because of course you're going to have some costs and things like that. But of course 9.5% whatever the salary is that you pay yourself. So the idea is about doing the calculations first, working out the salary that you want to be earning, drawing the net income out of the business, so and take care of your tax at a company level. So make sure that whatever that number is in the tax part is going into a certain account. Of course, 10% of your goods and services going across into there, and then working out a direct debit, ideally, to going into your superannuation. So hopefully that helps you. It's all about just doing the pre-planning. For most small business people, tax sneaks up on them and doesn't, it really catches them off guard. So you should be planning for this stuff in advance so your tax bill doesn't sneak up on you.
There's two types of people with this stuff, right? There's people that get it right and they never have a problem. They save the money up as they go and they don't run into any trouble. And that's what you want to do. You know, they're on top of their finances. They're running a business. They understand what's coming in, what's going out. They're saving up the cash that they need to pay the tax man every quarter or annually, whatever it may be. Then there's the other group, right, who essentially have no idea what's going on. They don't save any money for tax. They spend every dollar they earn, and then they end up in a lot of strife with the ATO. And this can be crippling, both at a business level and on a personal level as well. So there's been more than one business gone belly up because they haven't taken into account their tax obligations and the amount of stress that I've seen these families go under and stuff like that. You need to take this seriously. And if you're running a business, right, and you don't understand the way the tax system works, and you're not paying an accountant, I don't mean an accountant that you pay $200 a year to when he does your tax return at the end of the year. You can do it online for $30. Like, that's not what accountants are supposed to do. If you're running in a business and you don't understand the tax system, and you don't have an accountant or a bookkeeper and an accountant that hold your hand every single month and make sure you get it right, should you really be in business? Are you taking it that seriously? And I'm being a bit aggressive about it, but I've seen people go belly up on this stuff. So you have to get it right. You absolutely have to get it right.
So many people think this money's theirs and they just spend it, and they think their business is running profitably because they haven't factored in their tax. It is extremely detrimental. So it's important that you're on top of it. It comes down to having a plan, having the right cash flow structure. If you need a diagram, we will post that. I'm actually probably going to do a video during the week, and I'll actually post that up in the community, talking through how we approach that, and make sure that you ideally use software in your business, using a software like Xero for your personal cash flow, using something like My Prosperity, and using that to ensure that you have oversight, that you're staying on top of things.
Oh, good stuff. So we received a question here from Choco. He said, "Hey Sam, some car Bluetooths recognise SJ as the Society of Jesus. Does that explain the beard?" So to give you guys a little bit of background, my Uncle Anthony, whenever I ring his phone, he's got my name in his phone as SJ. So whenever I ring his phone, it says out loud, the Society of Jesus is calling. I don't know why. I don't know why it does that. Choco, yeah, why not? That explains the beard. That's why I grew the beard. I thought I'd mold into my who I'm supposed to be, I guess, and become part of the society.
The Society of Jesus. That's fantastic.
We're gonna get Choco. He's gonna come on the podcast.
Come on the podcast.
You're gonna come on.
Love to have you, mate.
You're gonna come on the podcast, Choc. You're gonna talk about the business you're running, and you're going to talk about all the other products and stuff that you're trying to introduce as well. So let's follow up with Choco after the Q&A.
Good stuff.
All right. So this is a question I got during the week, and it's been a little bit on the media and all that. What is going on with this Royal Commission into the finance industry, and is it affecting you guys? All right, to give you guys a little bit of background, there's a Royal Commission into banking, superannuation, and the financial services industry. Essentially, everyone's been taking the piss for a very long time, and the government's had enough of it, and they're clamping down, right? So you've seen it in real life come through these stricter lending standards, okay? And this has been coming for years. They've been pressing. It's getting harder and harder and harder to borrow money. On that note, yes, that does affect us. Being a finance broker as my background, it is more difficult to borrow money today than it was 12 months ago, and even harder than what it was 24 months ago. So that affects us and the amount of clients that we can help for them to achieve their goals. On a bigger picture, though, our business. So to give you guys a breakdown, out of everything that the government's looking at, that the Royal Commission's looking at, 70% of it is on banking. All right, so think of your big four banks. 10% of it is in superannuation and superannuation providers, and 5% of it is in general insurance intermediaries and in financial advice. So our business, Aureus Financial, would probably fall under that 5%. We're a small diversified financial services business. We're not a bank, and with 70% of the nearly 2,400 submissions that they're looking at being banking related, it's not really having a huge impact on us, rather than the banks tightening, making it harder to borrow. And there's been a little bit of back and forth with banks pointing the fingers at brokers and brokers pointing the fingers at banks. I'm staying well out of that. That's politics. That's not going to help me. It's not going to help you. But I guess that's the long and short of it.
Here's the thing: our industry's gone through a lot of regulation, and a lot of new legislation has come about to protect the consumer. And a lot of this stuff typically comes off the back of people doing the wrong thing, being cowboys in the industry. Everyday Aussies get burnt, and the government reforms to ensure that there's safety nets to avoid these things ever happening again. So this is not something new. I think that just because it's in the media, people are freaking out a little bit, but this can only mean good things for the consumer. So for those of us who are doing the right thing, we embrace all of this stuff because it's not going to mean anything to us. To give you an example, in the financial advice industry, a while back, there was a reform that was implemented called the Future of Financial Advice. And one of the biggest things was about outlawing trail commissions that were paid on investment and superannuation products that were kind of built in that clients didn't see. They just thought that that's what they were paying. And unfortunately, there was a remuneration that was going to an advisor. And because there was that disconnect, the advisor didn't feel that they had any responsibility to have to do anything for that money. So it was a really inefficient way. So for a lot of advisors at that time who were still utilizing that as a strategy in their business, they were kicking and screaming because it was challenging the way that their business was created. Ever since I started my career, I've always been a fee-for-service advisor. I've never charged a percentage fee to any of my clients. So therefore, when these changes came through, it was like, okay, fantastic. It's great to see that the industry is actually catching up to what we're doing. So same thing's going to happen. I think the biggest impact this is going to mean is that I think a lot of banks are going to stop being the deliverer of product. I think that a lot of, and right now the biggest conflict, and we're seeing it, for example, ANZ sold off their wealth business, which is basically their distribution for insurance, investments and super. They've sold it off. And it's a lot of the banks wiping their hands clean of headaches because it is not their core business. Their core business is banking, and they've tried to diversify their businesses and it just has not been successful because they are transactors. It's a transactional business model. And a lot of these products are so complex that they require a client to have to work with an advisor, an expert, somebody who knows it and is able to tailor a solution to their individual circumstances. So all this can mean is that clients are going to be educated around the value of advice, the value of getting in touch with a professional that knows their stuff, that is going to work for them and not for the bank, and provide them with the best possible outcomes. So this can only mean good things.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to stop, right? So I think, as Jackson said, they've done financial advice a few years ago. They reformed the industry over the past couple of years, and even up to today, they're doing the finance, the mortgage, the home loan industry. They're clamping down on that. I think post all of this, if I had to take a punt, I would say that they'll move into the property industry next. There's still a lot of cowboys in the property industry, fugazzing around as investment advisors when they're not, they're salespeople. And I'm not talking about the sell side, so I'm not talking about selling agents. I'm talking about buyers agents and a lot of these guys that do off the plan project marketing and stuff like that. That's been the most unregulated financial space in Australia for a very long time. And I think once the regulators are through with banking, they're going to be moving on into the property scene, and there's going to be a bit of damage go on there. But look, I don't mind at all. For anyone who's doing the right thing, none of this stuff matters anyway. Do you know what I mean? For someone like us, we benefit from it because it eliminates other people in the industry that can't change, they can't adapt, and they can't learn new ways of doing things. If you're like us and you're 30 years old and you got another 30 years or more in the workforce, the only one thing that's going to be certain is going to be change over the next 30 years. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it doesn't matter what you're doing. So if you can't change and adapt, I think you're going to be in good trouble.
Yeah. Next question. This is a little bit of a controversial one, so we're going to ruffle some feathers. I've been approached by an investment business that wants me to invest my superannuation into property. What do you think about this? Now, there's a couple of ways you can approach this, and I've seen a couple of iterations of businesses that have been established to really ride the wave of this kind of this huge interest in residential property, particularly in Australia. So the first one and the first way that we're seeing is people setting up what's called a self-managed superannuation fund, or what's known as an SMSF, for the purposes of buying residential property. Now, this strategy worked extremely well, more so for more affluent individuals who are in their later stages of life, so typically mid-40s to early 50s plus, had a really healthy superannuation balance. We're talking no less than 300,000 combined with their partner. Typically required both of the partners to be working in order to maximise their ability to contribute to super. And there was a phenomenal strategy. We were able to set up the fund, buy a direct property, go and get a loan from a bank at around about a 60% loan to value ratio. And with the historical contribution caps, we could pay off that loan in full within a period of about 7 years. Great, right? And we could rinse and repeat this strategy, and we got some really phenomenal outcomes, particularly off the back of this last property cycle. Now, there's lots of things that have changed since then. Back to our previous question, lending reform. Borrowing inside super is extremely difficult now. Interest rates are very expensive. We've already gone through a tremendous growth in the property market, which has meant that it's unlikely to be able to get the same amount of historical growth that we've got for the short term. There is also limitations in terms of the costs associated with getting it set up. And finally, given that there have been recent government reform to reduce the contribution caps for pre-tax contributions, along with taxing high-income earners who are earning over $300,000 a year, of allowing them to, or making them pay 30% on their super contributions instead of 15% tax. All of these things are limiting factors. So right now we're finding that utilising that strategy is not a viable option for the majority of clients. Of course, there's still going to be the rare one where it does happen to work, but for most, it doesn't work. And this is the thing, that people have learnt these strategies and think that they can continue to use them over and over and over again because they've worked before, and thinking that they're going to work again. Sometimes you're wrong. So once again, this comes down to the strategy and what you're trying to achieve, and ensuring this is tailored to your situation. The other one that we've seen is these kind of master funds, like a retail style fund, similar to like what you get from your employer, like the industry funds, like the other retail players, like your MLCs and AMPs of the world. But they're setting up these smaller kind of boutique superannuation master funds, where are kind of a pooled investment, and they're utilising as part of their investment strategy going and buying residential property. Now, residential property as a direct investment without the power of leverage is a terrible investment. And the reason for it is that it is illiquid. It has a high cost in order to maintain. Typically, a decent residential property will cost you 1% per annum in order to maintain. If there's anything that goes wrong, then of course that can be much more significant. The rental is terrible in terms of a yield for the value of the property. And with all of these things combined, it is not great to invest in a pooled structure. The whole idea of having a pooled structure is it is liquid. It is unitized. You have the ability to put money in and take money out as you need to. Your employer is drip feeding money into the fund every single month or every single quarter, and it is diversified across the whole world. So it is minimizing risk. I have a big issue with a lot of these kind of sexy and sophisticated products that are coming out, talking about investing into tech and investing into property or whatever it is. It is selling the dream, and it is magnifying risk by putting all of your eggs in one basket. We love property. Property is fantastic, but it needs to be the right vehicle utilized in the right way in order to get you to your outcomes. So I would say that be careful with these things. They're typically astronomically expensive. The last one that I looked at, the management costs were in excess of 1.6% per annum. To give you an example, a good industry fund or even a wholesale superannuation fund should cost you, inclusive of your administration expenses and investment expenses, less than 0.7% per annum. So half the cost of what these other providers are trying to show. And what that means is that they need to make 0.7% more than that other option per annum, even just to break even. And over the long term, it just won't happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of good points there, and this is not to say, right, that investing in residential property in your super is a dud strategy or a dead strategy, right? What it is saying, what we are saying, is that it is a very specific strategy for a very specific person, all right? This is not something, your first-time property buyer or someone who's trying to make ends meet and they're just trying to get ahead and they want to use the super. A lot of guys and accountants were really bad at this at one stage. We're just absolutely selling the dream of this SMSF and investing in property to absolutely everybody. But this is not for everybody. This is for really affluent individuals with a pretty substantial net worth. So, if you got 3, 4, 5, 600,000 in your super, something like that, or even upwards, even higher, you've got really good household income. You've typically paid your home off. You've typically got assets outside of super in your personal name. This is for people that are a little bit more advanced. Do you know what I mean? This is not a beginner strategy, and that's where they made a mess of it. Is that they sold it to people as a beginner strategy, and it's definitely not.
Yeah, they called it the DIY super fund. And I tell you right now, we have an internal checklist of all of the things that we need to do on an ongoing basis every single year for our SMSF clients that involves probably about 40 steps. And we put in a lot of time and effort into these things on the basis that we want to make sure that our clients do the right thing. We've seen just so many people do it wrong, stuff it up, buy overseas property, buy cryptocurrency, stupid things that is ultimately made them lose more money than they've gained, and that's just not what it's about. So make sure you get advice around these things before you dive in.
And I think what a lot of people don't realise is if you've got a plan, if you've got a strategy, you don't need to do these high risk things. It's not necessary. There's very few people that actually need to do it, and there's even less people that actually do it well and get ahead from it. So you need to educate yourself a little bit in the space.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a good one. So we're discussing this this week with a couple of clients. At what point in my relationship should I start planning with my partner? So this is a very personal question, right? There is no right or wrong answer to this one. I think when you've got a solid commitment in place, then it's in a serious relationship. You should be planning together. It's very hard to grow wealth as a household over the long term if you have a husband and wife that segregates their income and their assets and all that from each other. You're making it more difficult for yourself, and it's going to be harder to get ahead. To give you guys a little bit of background, I think my wife and I, when we got engaged, I think that's when we joined up all our bank accounts. We knew it was a serious commitment. We're both in it for the long term or forever, and that's when we joined up our bank accounts. And it's been great. It simplifies everything. We've actually got structures for people to still share majority of all their banking, but still have individual bank accounts as well for spending money and things like that. But I think personally, if you're in a serious relationship, you're living together, you're engaged, you're going to get married, you've got kids, then if you're that far in the relationship and you trust and you love the person that much, then the money part of it shouldn't really be too much of an issue. Do you know what I mean? So I know it's very touchy for some people, and I don't want to ruffle anyone's feathers, but it's it's something that if it's causing stress in a relationship, you should really talk about this.
Look, I wrote about this in my book, that the majority of arguments that happen in a relationship and the majority of breakups and divorces that occur are due to financial reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's due to the fact that how you've approached your household finances is wrong. And the whole idea about making sure that you can avoid these issues is about removing ambiguity and making sure that you have an objective strategy to working together in pursuit of your combined and collective goals. So on Sam's point, if you're living together, you're committed to each other, you want to move forward and create a life together, and that's when you should do it. It's a commitment to the partnership, and it's setting yourselves the right foundation to build together. Because the whole idea of being with someone is about you have the ability to work together. You can combine forces to get ahead faster. So unless you are combining forces and holding each other accountable, then you're not going to get the progress that you want, and it's ultimately going to lead to more issues than it would otherwise. So the first thing should be, if you are at that point, then look at getting a strategy together. The most important thing, as Sam said, is about having things combined, that you partner together to combine forces, but still having independence. You shouldn't be living in each other's pockets. You should have the ability to live your life independently and not have to answer to anyone else for it. But of course, there needs to be a means of accountability where you ensure you keep each other on track, because there's going to be times where you do stumble and you make mistakes, and you should work through that together. So the first thing is about getting clear on each of your individual goals and your collective goals. Then it's about setting up your cash flow in the right way. And there's a very particular structure. Once again, in that video that I'll record next week, I'll put that up on the community and talk you through it. The next thing you need to consider is that if you're not quite ready to jump into that, and we had a meeting with a client last night where we had that conversation, and there's a couple of things there that they said, look, we want to keep things independent so we are able to establish our own foundations first before we dive in to work together, which is perfectly fine. But what's really important there is that even though you keep your independence, the accountability is still really important. So we went through an exercise of going through each of their respective goals independently, and also their goals together. So then we can set some plans about how each of them are going to contribute and hold each other accountable to what they respectively want to achieve for themselves. And also setting a milestone of when they're going to be able to hold themselves accountable to getting to a point where they can combine forces confidently and be set up for success.
Mate, if Prince Harry doesn't need a prenup, neither does anyone else.
Exactly right. Good on you, Haz. If you're watching today.
Of course he's watching. Yeah, what else
definitely
would
watching.
Prince Harry be doing at midnight in England? Mate?
Exactly right. He's committed to ask Aureus anything.
All right, so this one's for you, mate.
All right. I want to do more video content to promote my business. However, I find it awkward in recording. Any tips? Look, this is something that obviously we're still learning. I think that with anything in life, you've got to immerse yourself in the things that make you uncomfortable and that you are a little bit nervous about. That's the only way to get good at these things. We had a podcast with a phenomenal lady today by the name of Tara Romano, and what was really inspiring, and the thing that's come to mind around this, is that she's been hustling in her various businesses for a really long time, and one of the key things to her success was consistency, even though she wasn't getting success in the first instance. And to give you some insight, today she has over 5 million combined views on YouTube. She's created a phenomenal business in dance. She's also created a network marketing business that's built on really, really good values. And she is a really, really inspiring individual. And when we spoke to her, we asked her, well, were you always like this? Or is this something that you've learned along the way? And she said, look, I did have some characteristics that allowed me to be inspiring and be a leader, but I had to hone this over time. When I reflect back on my previous videos, they were crap. Same thing for us. We're just getting started in this, and it's about the consistency. So I think that you just need to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Try your best not to focus on the post editing to cut out all of your mistakes. Because if you're saying, oh, I'm going to fix that in post, then you're going to take so much more time to get the video out there. And you're also not training yourself to be able to think on the spot and not make mistakes. I'm sure you can see through our live events, there's no editing. This is just us. We're just talking, we're coming up with things off the top of our heads, maybe talking a little bit of BS, having a bit of friendly banter, but we can do it comfortably because we've been doing this for a while. Not long, but we're doing it for a little while. And it's only going to get better. It compounds on itself. So chuck yourself in the deep end, give it a crack.
I think there's a couple of parts to this, right? So I think with the video content, right, we take the piss a little bit, right? It's we all day. You got to think, right? We're sitting here. We work with numbers and figures and money all day. So if we can't get on the video and he can put his funny hat on or whatever he was doing before, you got to be able to take the piss a little bit and be yourself, because you can only keep up a facade for so long. Do you know what I mean? You can't pretend to be somebody that you're not for a very long period of time. So for the videos, just get on, just have a crack at it. Is it nerve-wracking? Maybe for the first time. After that, you just get used to it. And with the rest of it, right, so continuing to promote your business through content marketing, which is, a big part of what we do. We produce a lot of content. Yeah, Jackson's right. You just got to keep at it. You just got to keep at it. Even would I say I'm 100% happy with our content marketing strategies today? No way. I think we've got another 1,000% to go before we're going to be where we're happy with it. But I look back at what we were doing 3 months ago, and it's phenomenally better. We had no idea what we were doing 3 months ago, and we've learned and we've done courses and we've worked really hard to get better at it. It's still not, still not the best at it, but we're probably getting better than most now. And we're going to keep pushing until, we're in that very top pinnacle. And I think that reflects on everything that you do in business. You know what I mean? If you're not continuing to push to get better and better and better at something, and it's just, time, I guess.
Well, look at young Sal as part of our team. Sal is a phenomenal individual, and he's a bit of a go-getter. And we put it to him, we go, mate, you should be doing some content. And then we come up with a little segment for him, Sal's tips. And look, he's smashing out the videos, and he's great in front of the camera, and people love it. People are commenting, people are liking, and he's got some really great things to share. So it just goes to show that we all have the ability to get in front of a camera, give it a crack. You've just got to push yourself out of your comfort zone, and over time, it's only going to get better.
Go have a look at them, right? So jump on, go check out the sales tips videos, right? They've been edited. They've got banners on them. They've got our team in the Philos have been, cleaning them up and making them pretty. When we first put Sal in front of a camera, he couldn't spit out 2 sentences. He was so nervous. Now he smashes it out. He talks like a professional. So that's all you need to do. You just need to keep training. It's like anything else in life.
Exactly right.
All right, that was a good question. All right, so this is something we spoke about it this week. We spoke about it last week, the week before. I suspect I'm going to have to answer this question every week for the next X amount of years. I'm not sure, but they've said to me, I've seen on the news that the property market is going backwards. Is property still going to be a good investment moving forward? All right, so let me address the first sentence first. Property market's going backwards. Well, there's come out of a report. If they annualise the past 3 months over the next 12 months, then every single capital city in Australia, besides Hobart, which has performed phenomenally, every other single capital city has gone backwards, right? So we are at a different stage of the property cycle. Go back 2 years ago and it was 20% year on year. The property markets were booming, and predominantly only in Sydney and Melbourne. So when they say the property markets around the country are booming, it's not quite true. A lot of other property markets were struggling, and it's similar to how it is today. Melbourne's come off the boil, Sydney's come off the boil, Brisbane's not doing too well, Hobart's doing all right, Adelaide's not doing too well. All these other Perth looks like it's stopping going down, but it's not going up, and the same with Darwin. So, and then you've got all your regional centres, right? You've got all your regional centres around the country, or the satellite cities, and then you've got suburbs within each city where some are doing really shit and some are doing really good. And that's always going to be the case. There's going to be some suburbs that perform great, even in a city that's going down, and there's some suburbs that aren't going to perform at all in a city that's going up. So property market, there is not one property market. Australia is 1,000 different property markets. So yes, some are going backwards. That is true. Actually, most of them are going backwards. But is property still going to be a good investment moving forward? Yes, of course it is. The fundamentals that have made residential real estate an attractive investment and a high-performing investment for the past 50 years in Australia, and even longer if you look back, they're still there, right? So all the countries in the world that have really good performing property markets, they have two big, massive macro fundamental factors, right? They have the population of the country increases over time, and they have the wealth of the people in the country increase over time. So think about England, think about America, Australia, New Zealand, all these places, China, where the wealth of the country and the population of the country is going up, it puts heaps of pressure on property prices. Yes, they might go up and down over the short term, but over the long term, those two things there cause property prices to move in the upwards direction. So you need both though. You can't have the wealth of a country go up and the population go down like Japan. Property prices there have struggled for 20 or 30 years because whilst they're getting richer, the population's not. It's going down because they got a bad immigration policy, so it keeps a lid on property prices. And then let's take any random African country into consideration. Whilst the population of the country has increased drastically, the wealth of the country hasn't. So that keeps a lid on property prices as well. So when you're talking about Australia, if you're thinking to invest in property for the next 50 years, the question you need to ask yourself, is Australia going to have more people who are richer over the next 50 years? And the answer to that is yes. Australians there's going to be more of us. We're having heaps of kids. We've got heaps of immigration, nearly the highest immigration in the world. Are people going to continue to do better and better over time? Of course they are. Look at the living standards today compared to your parents, compared to their parents, right? My grandfather was telling me about when he bought his first TV, what a phenomenal event it was when someone got their first TV. Look at people today. Do you know what I mean? People got 10 TVs in the house. It doesn't matter. So yes, property investment is still going to be a good investment moving forward.
And I agree, under the right circumstances. You have to have the right parameters in order to invest in property. It's about being able to select the right asset based on those fundamentals. And the thing about property, it's not about the phenomenal returns that it gets, because the returns are pretty modest, but it's the consistency. And that's what's allowed many people to be able to create a substantial amount in wealth as a result of investing in property, because you buy it, you hold it, you stick the course. And because it is such a pain in the neck to get rid of it, people are less inclined to do so, which more so emphasises their ability to stick the course. So there's a lot of variables there at play. Property is still the core of the portfolios that we create for our clients. It's still going to be a staple in the Australian portfolio moving forwards. Of course, there's going to be some blips in the radar along the way, but it's important that you select the right assets and don't make knee-jerk reactions when it comes to buying property just because it's price related, and make sure that you're in it for the long term.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really important things that you touched on there. The structure of property, right? The stability of property means you can leverage really hard against it, right? So you can essentially borrow, 4/5 of the price of a property from a bank. No, you can't do that with any other asset. Doesn't matter if you're in business or shares or any other asset, you can't borrow that much against it. So that leverage is one of the biggest factors why property's been such a good investment. And the other thing Jackson touched on was selecting the right asset. I can't stress this enough. When you are investing in a property, pay a professional property advisor to find the asset for you. If you get it right or you get it wrong, it's going to be down to luck. You don't know what you're doing. You're not in the property investment industry. You don't know what to look for. This might be the first property you've ever bought or the first investment property you've ever bought. You wouldn't go and do leg surgery on yourself. So don't go
I was talking to a client about this last night, right? An example I like to use, that a lot of the property groups that we work with have a valuation background, which means they understand what the banks look for when it comes to selecting assets and for the purpose of defining how good they are for security. Of course, the bank, all they care about is getting their money back in the event of the unforeseen. Now, one of the big things, let's say you went into a property, it looks fantastic, you go in, you have a look around, and there's, unbeknownst to you, a retaining wall that's in excess of 1.5 metres, which actually requires an engineer's certificate. You buy the property, something goes wrong with the retaining wall, there's no engineer certificate, let's say in this example, that could cost you tens of thousands of dollars to resolve. And not only that, it can affect your ability to resell that property, given that a savvy investor or a buyer's agent who's representing a savvy investor has the ability to come in and say, oh, I'm not going to buy that property. So all of the property advisors that we work with, actually on their checklist, that's one of the things in the list of probably 50 or 60 things that they look for, that if a property has a retaining wall that requires engineering, it is off the list. And there are other things like having a pool or all these other things where it is risk minimization 101. And as an example, some of the property groups that we've worked with, we've seen that in certain parts of Australia, there's been negative performance, but at a micro level, because they've been able to do the fundamental analysis to select the asset, there's been a differential of 10 or 12% in a 12-month period of performance. So if you're talking about an investment of 10 grand, yeah, it's painful. But if you're looking at a $500,000 investment, it's a 2% value of what you're investing. So if you're making 12%, but you're paying 2% to do it, does that make sense?
You're paying 4.5% to the tax man anyway.
Exactly right.
Do you know what I mean?
So it's one of those things that we always advocate that you get the right advice, because it really goes a long way to ensuring that you don't have a negative experience when it comes to property, because we've seen plenty of them for people who just weren't educated, jumped in and made a bad decision. So that is our Ask Aureus Anything for the week. We appreciate your participation. Of course, if you're watching this after we go offline, feel free to post your questions. We will put them on the list for next week. Otherwise, send us an email, shoot us a message. We'll collate all of the questions, and we will see you same place, same time next week for our Ask Aureus Anything live Q&A.
Enjoy your Wednesday night.
Catch you later.